Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where this week I'm recording live from the VMware Explore event in Barcelona. Now, as you all know, one of the things that I'm passionate about is exploring how technology is impacting areas outside of the private sector and how it's impacting all our lives. So, when I bumped into Neill Smith, Head of Infrastructure of the Scottish Government, I had to invite him on the podcast to find out a little bit more about his work and maybe bust a few myths about the adoption of technology in the public sector. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Barcelona, where you can join me and Neill Smith, Head of Infrastructure of Scottish Government, on the show floor with me at VMware Explore. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Neill. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are, what you do?
Hi there, everybody. My name is Neill Smith. I'm Head of Infrastructure of the Scottish Government for the Agricultural Economy Directorate. The Agricultural Economy Directorate is one of the largest directorates inside the Scottish Government. Fundamentally, what do? We're a software house where we make applications for farmers to submit subsidies. We pay out around about $1 billion every year. I translate it to dollars, £700 million isn't as cool sounding as $1 billion. And we develop applications effectively. I manage a multidisciplinary team comprising of 3 or 4 main platforms. We still have a physical platform. We're a government entity still to transform our physical platform. We have our largest platform in VMware, and we also run Kubernetes and AWS. So I have traditional sysadmins on physical, virtual, cloud and Kubernetes, database admins on 2 different database products, identity management on 3 different identity management products, automation, and a bit of cyber. So it's quite a wide and varied team, but what might come out through this conversation, we find that we can run with some real creative ideas because we've got really all the tools and people to come up with these ideas and run with it, and most of the guys are ex-devs in the team as well.
Wow. I mean, before you came on the podcast, I was just talking with Gavin from Extrovert and Martin from VMware. We're talking about how areas that you don't automatically associate with technology. When you think government, you don't necessarily, you think more the private sector. Yeah. So can you offer a bit of an overview on your partnership between VMware and Extrovert and also the Scottish Government, and how did it all begin? I feel there's got to be a story here.
You're spot on, Neil. The government traditionally are on that bottom end of the curve, or there seem to be. And I would say in modern day now, you're looking at DWP or DFID or NHSX, etc. They're doing some cool stuff. So there are pockets in there, but we're still deemed on that lower end of the curve. I'm quite fortunate where we're on that top end of the curve, and we're recognised by numerous vendors on exploiting their technologies pretty well. And I'll maybe cover that a little bit later. And it's a bit unique. And for me, I used to be technical like the guys, but it's my job now to protect them from the red tape and bureaucracy, which still goes on in the government, right? We're desperately trying to change that and change the culture, but it's still there. So it's my job to protect the guys from that and let them do what they're good at. The happy person's a productive person. And if they then are happy in what they do and they're excelling, they've still got to do to their day-to-day tickets, etc., then after that, I let them explore and innovate. And the government is a challenge because we're trying to do more for less, particularly right now with the current financial climate. And it can be a real challenge, but I'm trying to create the right environment, the right culture, which puts us on that curve, doing cool tech to do cool stuff. So a few years ago, we engaged with Extrovert. Generally, what I'll try and do is when we engage with partners, so in this instance, Extrovert for VMware, generally, I've tried to do as minimal as possible. I want my guys to try and do as much as possible, just because that's the best way to kind of learn. Because obviously partners can come in and deliver, etc. But I don't think it's not invested in our kind of old people. So we procured NSXT and we used Extrovert to deliver NSXT, so our software-defined networking, etc. It was a huge success. They did ask on what level of the dial did we want? Did we want them to do it all, etc. It was done just at the start of COVID, so it's about 3 years ago now. So, and again, I was very much we've got to be doing it. So even though we're doing it over a Microsoft Teams, it was us that was doing all the mouse controls and typing the keyboard. So we we're just visually watching someone do it, which also helps. I think when you do it, you can actually learn more, etc. And And we delivered that engagement inside the time that we'd allocated. It was 3 main phases. I won't go into the detail of the 3 main phases, but we delivered those 3 main phases. And then we also started off using a little bit of extra time on the micro-segmentation to try and further enhance the government's security. Because the government's still, north-south firewall kind of traffic. Let's try and protect that, given ransomware is huge nowadays, etc. And if we can exploit technologies, we need software-defined networking for a particular reason or reasons, but actually if we can use micro-segmentation to then further enhance the cyber piece, then we're actually, we're getting value for money in the products that we've done. And over the years, I've just kept engaged with Extrovert, etc. And we're kind of looking at maybe looking at Tanzu TAT, and that's more about changing the culture. It's not about buying a bit of software. The government still thinks, or certain areas of the government still think, if you buy a bit of software and it'll fix the world, right? And software is just an enabler in reality, and it's people, process, culture that kind of changes that. And the government's still slow to that kind of a world. So what I'm trying to do is work with the ex-Pivotal guys, so now Tanzu TAP, to try and bring in a culture change on changing on how we do our software delivery. So there's no point using a Kubernetes platform or an AWS a cloud if we're going to do what we've done previously. You're not going to gain the benefits of those platforms. So it's trying to working closely with our I desperately try not to say them as the business. We're all colleagues. Yeah. I think you notice in most organizations, whether government or not, you have IT and business, and ultimately I think we're all one and the same. We've all got the same end goal. We've got to, if our citizens for the service that we deliver are happy, then we've really smashed it, right? And the minister's kind of happy. So there's that kind of component where changing the culture is big. And if we can change the way we do things in terms of the software supply chain and do more of a platform engineering, then the business, in inverted commas, would get a quicker path to live, and we would automate and be a lot more efficient. And the more things you automate, the more efficient you become, frees up people's time to then be more exploratory in the innovative piece. And that then, self-perpetuates. If you just keep the lights on, and I got speaking to a chap a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, from he was CTO from Starling Bank, I think he was. And it always resonates with me. He says, when you have an IT project, you'll have the start date and you'll have a Gantt chart. And then when that application goes live, that's the end of the Gantt chart. But there's nothing on that operational side. It just seems to get forgotten about. There's no real budget. They don't really understand. It's just, so it's difficult from an infrastructure on that operation side that you don't get it's not just the recognition, but you don't get there's nothing really planned for it. And when you try to improve certain services, sometimes it takes time and effort, and that's not really what they want. They want to keep the lights on, but you're putting off the inevitable, and the longer you leave it, the bigger it becomes, the more complex that challenge becomes, but then becomes time-consuming and costly, etc.
I always say on this podcast every day, technology works best when it brings people together. And we're in a time at the moment where everyone's chasing after that next shiny big thing, the next shiny tech. And it's that culture piece. If that gets forgotten, whether it be private or public sector, it's the same right across, isn't it?
100%. It's, and the government is getting better, but they're still very traditional. And I don't mind saying this, micromanagement's still there. It's still very hierarchical. And I think that's counterproductive. And what I want to do is flatten that structure, allow everybody can be a leader. I think still in the government, we think leaders are sort of a certain senior grade, but in reality, that's not the case. Anybody can be a leader, right? It's creating that right environment to allow people to be, to help people or assist people, to bring people on, right? That's the idea of a leader is to bring people on, to let them be what they're kind of good at and create that environment for them, etc. And the government's still slightly chilly. We are recognizing that, but it's a juggernaut, right? The government, like any large, I think, enterprise, is difficult to change. And I think humans, by their very nature, are resistant to change, or people get nervous on a big project. And I always frame things in my head, and it says, how can I frame this and make it more positive? So you get people that get nervous on a big new project. And I'm like, well, that's quite cool, because we can use some cool new tech to actually then exploit, but allow the ability to go, we can use this tech, but it might not work, or it might not, but then say that's okay. But we've explored that, and then 6 months later, there might be a new requirement that comes down the line. And then you can say, oh, hold on a minute, we played about with that tech, etc. And again, it allows that innovation and collaboration. You never know when requirements come out of left field all the time from government, right? And you can start to go, well, hold on, no, we actually experimented with this. It didn't fit a requirement for that particular piece of work, but actually this will be perfect for that. And it's that learning kind of bit. It's just, we're slow to the culture piece, but we're getting there. And there is an acknowledgement, but it's a juggernaut. They are turning slowly.
And I'm not sure how much you're able to share or talk about this, but what influenced the Scottish Government's transition towards the cloud? What were the key drivers there?
It's a great question, Neil, right? And everybody's got a cloud-first strategy. Yeah. And I think in the government, particularly for the senior civil servants, the government seemed to interpret that a cloud-first strategy means everything goes in the cloud. And I was like, that's not what it means, okay? And sometimes you have to kind of break that down into civil service talk and senior civil servants, and etc. And the phrases that will come out with, they generally resonate. I always say you host your workloads based on the requirements. Okay, that makes perfect sense. But I've spoken to numerous other government organisations throughout the whole UK, not just in Scotland, and private sector, and they're like, I'm all in on AWS, I'm all in on Azure. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, why did you do that? And they'll come up with some reasons. And I mean, for me, that sounds like you've picked your technology and now you're shoehorning your requirements into the technology. Yeah. And, AWS or Azure don't do the best of everything, right? So I would rather have that ability to go, what does my requirement dictate? So then trying to transform that into civil service kind of speak to go, how can I get around our heads that cloud's great, but it's not the be all and end all? And I use the phrase cloud's not prescriptive. And it's like you or I, Neil, in this room going to the doctor and he or she prescribing us the same medicine. Yeah. Well, that's nonsense, right? Because we're unique and we're different. Well, our workloads are the same. And it's just understanding that. Now, the chances are that, a large percentage of our workloads, and they already are going to be in the cloud. But it shouldn't be that it's got to go there no matter what. Yeah. But that brings its own challenges, because then if you're saying you want to use multi-cloud, how are you managing that? Because it's difficult enough to get skills. We might cover that later in terms of skills in one hyperscale cloud provider. You need it in two. And there is challenges around that, but I'm dead against technology dictating your requirements. As I said earlier, that software's an enabler. And it's about the people and the culture and everything that can drive the change. But I still think people think cloud can be the utopia. And if you do cloud right, it's awesome. If you do cloud bad, you can be in a bad place.
Now, there's a great old saying that the last best experience you have anywhere becomes your standard expectation for your future experience everywhere. And the reason I say that, I spent a little time in Estonia earlier this year, and they've gone a complete digital society.
They're really proactive.
I think it's 98% of services are completely online. So, I mean, that's just one instance, but why do you think it is important for governments in particular to embrace modernisation efforts? Is it a rising expectation from the citizens as well?
I think it is. I think when everybody sees it now, because technology is so advanced, it doesn't matter if you're, buying a car or getting a credit card or whatever. The processes are so quick and easy now, right? So I think when you're providing digital services to the public sector, people expect that. So stuff now, I'll speak outside my comfort zone, but, like passport's far easier now, and people expect that. So I think, again, is being digitally smart makes perfect sense, because you can make efficiencies in terms of the process and the cost it takes. But then again, it's that end user, the citizens. If the citizens are happy and they can do something that previously you had to fill in paper or you had to do an online form, and you can actually simplify something, or even taking it to a wider area where a lot of the government departments still aren't joined up. So in reality, we're asking users to input data that we've already have. So it's part of maybe the future looking is actually enabling that data sharing piece where actually we already know all about you and we already know this. So you only need to give us this small component, which then simplifies the process as well. But Estonia are really groundbreaking on that. They get talking about quite frequently in our kind of area in terms of, this is a model to certainly look at. And like any model, right? Cherry pick, right? What's good, what's bad? Nothing's going to be 100% perfect, but that's how you learn, right?
100%. And obviously, you've been on this journey to the cloud. I'm curious, what were the major challenges and also opportunities do you think for other organisations, maybe at the beginning of that journey, investing in the cloud today? Anything you've learned from that?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier there, Neil, was skills is a real challenge. And, I identified that the government still, in its holistic term, is deemed at the bottom end of the curve, maybe on the technology, and maybe the pay isn't as comparable. So it's difficult. So when you're using technologies, and I always use the phrase, cloud's a beast and Kubernetes is a beast. These are awesome platforms, but they're extremely difficult. They're complex and they evolve so quickly. So there's a reason why cloud engineers or Kubernetes engineers are in high demand and they get a high salary. I don't think the government fully realize the complexity of the apps. I think they just see cloud as that was dead easy, right? We'll just put it in the cloud and everything works. Whereas traditionally, you would have a network guy who looked after the network, a backup guy for backup, a storage for storage, etc. But now, if you're a cloud engineer, they expect you to know all of that, right? And it evolves really quickly. Whether you go to the major hyperscale companies like reInvent, etc., and the amount of new services or the changes to the services, it's difficult to keep up. So fundamentally, the challenges are retaining and recruiting people, but it's getting up. And the one thing the government's great at is we have a great training budget. And I think we should really sell that. And I don't think we do enough to say, hey, that's okay. I always say, if we can attract people that have got a genuine interest, but don't really have any real background or certification, just a genuine interest, and we create the right culture, the right environment, man, they're going to excel and they're going to fly. But we acknowledge that we can attract those people. There'll be an attrition rate, but that's okay, right? They might want to go to cool cat companies like VMware or Extrovert, etc. But there might be people that stay. And the more people that stay and the better people, the quicker we can change the culture and do cooler new tech. And actually, we build our brand up and we start to becoming, maybe I want to start my first job or change my career in the Scottish Government, because they're not expecting the world of me to begin with. There's a great training budget, but they're doing some cool new tech. Whereas I think the other side is people see it as it's boring tech, they're not doing anything innovative, it's not paying that well, and I don't think they understand that actually trainings are a real key asset.
Yeah, because there is such a huge shortage of cybersecurity workers, cloud engineers. You can give anybody a license to work from anywhere. Yeah, you can go fly to Australia and relocate if you wanted. And I think the industry needs diversity of thought, doesn't it? It needs people from not your stereotypical IT young males. It needs people from a variety of backgrounds to resolve those variety of problems, different ways of thinking.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know great about it, but I'll touch on AI piece. I was at an event last night and I was speaking to a senior VMware executive in UK and Ireland, and she mentioned that. She goes, there's still not enough diversity. And I was like, you look around, you're like, yeah, it's still true.
And of course, we are here at VMware Explore in Barcelona. It seems that private AI seems to be dominating a lot of conversations. Is that something you're taking away as well?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from a government point of view. Obviously, private AI makes sense because obviously there's a lot of court cases, so there's a couple of court cases getting mentioned. I don't know if you heard about the Getty image one, where I can't remember it wasn't DALL-E, but I think they had generated an image and it still had a Getty image watermark on it. I think Getty are suing that company, right? And that's the fear kind of piece, right? A lot of people are diving in with their feet first, but not really understanding the legalities or challenges. Again, the government's quite slow to that, Neil. I think it's very much in its infancy, and obviously just last week we had the Bletchley Park where they're trying to do that regulation. Yeah, I'm a bit of a maverick in the government. I've been described that, which I take as a positive. I try and push the boundaries, not break the rules, but push the boundaries. And I generally think on this case, though, I think we need to take a step back for the private AI piece and wait till maybe it gets a bit more mature, it's a bit more regulated, because I think there's possibly a few legal pitfalls that maybe nobody wants to fall down into, but I think it'll be hugely embarrassing and reputational damage for a government to go down there. But I would still be keen on people to explore, but just on an internal kind of exploration kind of piece. But it's not something that we're looking at, but what we heard today makes perfect sense. Private AI, particularly for the government, makes sense rather than these kind of well-known public.
Yeah, 100%. And bringing it back to present day for a moment and VMware, how would you say VMware Cloud has helped to elevate some of the challenge that we've discussed today as a partner?
Oh yeah, so VMware Cloud, it goes part of the story. So we still use cloud native, but obviously with VMware Cloud and AWS, and we've been a customer of VMware for about 13 years now. So we've got people that have extensive knowledge in VMware. So actually one solution could be migrating workload into VMware Cloud and AWS, which is then hosted in AWS, but you can use, because it's hosted alongside the native AWS stuff, you can start to consume those native AWS services very seamlessly with less latency, etc. So what you can start to do is start to drip feed skills and knowledge in cloud by saying, hey, we do this up in VMware Cloud and AWS, but we can start to consume some native cloud services over the network link. It's ENI. I won't get too technical on that today, but so there's a huge solution there. I think we've found that a lot of people are realising with sustainability, and that's huge in the Scottish government, but around the world, a lot of people are realising that actually my data centres are efficient, that efficient, and we want to be seen to be, have a net zero target. So sometimes it'd be quite easy to maybe, let's move it into a VMware Cloud and AWS solution. Now, that doesn't tick all the boxes. Going into sustainability, there's 3 scopes, and scope 3 is indirect, and most people forget about, and that's a topic in itself.
Yeah.
But that can certainly, offset a lot of your kind of carbon kind of piece. So there's lots of solutions for VMware Cloud and AWS as data centers are closing, where people already have those skills, and it can be a nice kind of use it to keep continuity, but also put your toe in the water. In terms of, and I mentioned VMware Cloud AWS, but also you have the Azure equivalent in the Azure VMware solution as well. But it's a huge enabler. It can get people more accustomed to like VCF, the VMware Cloud Foundation, etc., and conform and start using like NSXT. So there's huge benefits there, but it also lends well to their multi-cloud strategy moving forward.
And the sustainability and agriculture piece, maybe should get you back on next year. I think it's almost an episode on its own for that, isn't it, really? But what would you say the future of the partnership looks like with VMware? Is there anything, obviously you can't share too much, but is there anything you can?
There's, we're always exploring, etc., whether it's VMware or with Extrovert, etc. Sustainability is huge for this. Scottish Government are being really aggressive on that, which is good. Ever since we came out of Brexit, we were no longer tied to the European rules on agriculture. So I'm sure the Scottish Government were the first in the UK to change or begin to change on how we actually pay subsidies to the farmers. And rather than whether it was size of the crop type, or protecting, a beetle bag, you leave that there, you get, there's all these kind of schemes, etc. To change it to be more greener and say, actually, we'll start paying you via your carbon emissions. So I think agriculture, I think this is accurate. I think agriculture, certainly in the UK, but maybe the world, is the 3rd biggest carbon emitter. Yeah. It's quite significant. I think it's close to transport. So it's significant. So if there's any way where we can use technology, help be greener, and there's a lot of cool tech in agriculture, right? A lot of people think agriculture is just, ploughing fields, etc. And we're currently, I always like to do proof of value and concepts, etc. Again, that culture environment, and we're currently working with a company called Planet Labs that take a picture of the entire Earth near every day, which is super cool, right? Yeah. So right now we do a lot of aerial photography. But this takes a picture every single day. So taking a picture every single day, and the satellites can go down to 3-4 centimeters, right? So you can really get down and identify. And then using AI, go back to your AI question, but on general AI, not generative AI, but just general AI and ML, we can detect boundary changes, crop type changes, carbon emissions, because some of these satellites actually they can calculate the carbon soil emissions and stuff. And that's a real game changer. And how cool is that? Because right now we have a lot of people that'll go around inspecting fields and making sure what's been plotted has been correct. I've got digitizers. We're still in their infancy on that, but these are really cool projects and really quite cutting edge, and just using the technology to our advantage to, again, make it easier for our end users, so those farmers that are submitting claims. If we can actually say, actually, we already know, here's your boundaries, we know already what crop types on it, we can tell you what your carbon emission on, so we're not asking them to submit all this. Again, anything that can make it easier for the end user is only ever a good thing, and using cool tech from a technical standpoint, and keeping my team going, man, this is awesome, right? Everybody wins. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the great thing about coming to conferences like this is the conversations you have with people outside of your area of expertise, and there's so many different technologies here and different thought processes. So looking further afield, are there any technologies or trends
that you're keeping abreast of, maybe watching closely? Anything excite you at the moment?
Yeah, so just mentioned earlier that the AI piece on the satellite photography, that's quite cool. And I mentioned earlier looking at that Tanzu Tap, the Tanzu application platform, and changing that culture. It's evolving continually, right? It's difficult to keep on top. These events are awesome. I always say, coming to these events, 50% is going to the breakout rooms. The other 50% is mixing with your peers, going to the solutions exchange. You know, it's incredible the amount of contacts I've made over the years. And you end up going, I met that person. They've given you a card. You phoned them up out of the blue 6 months later and went, hey, I've got an issue, man. Can you help me out? And like, yeah. And the amount of times, it just builds up, etc. And the contacts is, I don't want to overshare the some things we're looking at, but I would say mainly on the AI ML for the satellite photography is quite a key one. And I think that we need to first and foremost look to change culturally on how we deliver applications. And then I think that'll really free us up to do some really cool stuff. Because ideally what I want to do is I do a lot of talks, Neill, and thank you for inviting me to this podcast, I really want to be shown as the Scottish Government are actually doing something quite cool, but they're doing it right. And I get asked to go on stage quite a bit when we do some cool stuff. And I understand why a lot of the vendors like a government entity, in particular federal government, to be on stage. Because if I'm a private entity sitting there like a big bank, and the manager turns to his techie person and goes, if the Scottish Government can do it, man, how the hell are we not doing it, right? It's that it brings a bit of kudos. And I don't mind that, right? Because again, we're acknowledged at the bottom of the curve. But if we can start to change that narrative and so we can trap more people in, do cooler new stuff, and actually, really be a leading light, maybe it's more like a story to look like that a more digital government, but delivering services quickly and on budget, on time, etc., right? But doing cool tech to do that.
And your passion for this topic really shines through today. So for anyone that you might have inspired that could be listening anywhere in the world, where would you like to point them listening if they just want to learn more about the journey that you've been on? Or
so if you there's lots of places. I've done numerous podcasts. I've done the AWS official podcast on the VMware Cloud and AWS piece. I'm on LinkedIn. If you Google Neill Smith, Neill's got 2 L's. That's a little bit new. Smith's obviously super popular. Neill's got 2 L's. If you do Neill Smith, the Scottish Government, you'll see numerous case studies for some cool cat companies like Rubrik, Pure Storage, A5, etc. And and we are doing some cool stuff. But if anyone wants to reach out, connect me on LinkedIn or message, etc., I'm more than happy to share. I'm passionate. I've done this all my life, and it's what I've always done. I get that comment all the time, Neill. I was like, you're really passionate for this, and I am. I'm unique, right? There's a lot of people that maybe do jobs that's just a job, and actually, I find this cool. And when big new exciting changes come along, I'm like, okay, man, how can we use cool tech to help us?
Absolutely lovely. Been a real breath of fresh air today on the podcast. So I'll add links to everything there so people can find you nice and easy. But I know you're back to back, running around site, enjoying the site.
Sorry.
Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Neill. Much appreciated.
I think Neill's passion for his work and leveraging technology to make a difference to citizens and almost shine a light on how Scotland is helping lead the way is incredibly infectious. And I mentioned on the podcast earlier that I spent time in Estonia this year, and when I learned that they put 98% of their government services online, then speaking with Neill Smith today about the work they're doing in Scotland, it's made me think that there is a real movement here in the public sector. But what does that mean for nations that do not embrace technology? So, over to you. How are you or your country managing this transition? Please, I invite you all to email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can direct message me at Neill C. Hughes on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. So whether it be a quick message, a question, or even an audio message where you just hold down, record and email it across, please, techblogwriter@outlook.com. So let's keep this conversation going. You are all located in 165 different countries. I know that because I see the stats report at the end of each month. But I want to learn more about what you're seeing where you are. You could be thousands of miles away from me at the moment, but I want to hear more about what you're doing and what you're seeing and hearing. But that's it from me today at VMware Explore. So I will speak to you all again bright and early tomorrow morning. But just a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.